howdy from Oklahoma, where the world's largest fucking casino is.
Coming to you live from the great state of Oklahoma. Christina Bryan, come on down.
Warning, this show may be triggering for anybody experiencing gambling-related harm. Please watch cautiously. We speak from our experiences only. Please seek professional help for a gambling addiction.
Hi, welcome to the Bet Free Life. I'm Christina, and I haven't placed a bet since March of 2021.
And I am Brian, and I haven't placed a bet since July of 2014. And today we are talking about our gambling rituals.
Absolutely.
We're going to talk about what it was like to be us within our gambling realm and what we went through to get our gambling done and how that affected us. I believe we talked about this prior, and Christina and I have both done this on our respective podcasts in some form. I haven't done it in years, but it's very helpful for me. What was it like for you, Christina, when you talked about it?
It was very validating. I think when we're struggling with this addiction and our brain takes us to this illogical, irrational thinking. I don't know what's going on with my hands here. I talk with my hands. It takes us to this way of thinking and these behaviors. And I think it's just important to acknowledge that that's the addiction. The addiction is transforming our brain, our thoughts. And I think it's really important for us to talk about them, and maybe somebody listening will feel like, okay, I did the exact same thing. So I hate the word crazy, but I'm not crazy. Like, okay. And so, yeah, I think it's a great conversation to have.
And I know we already put up the trigger warning, but just to remind everybody, we're going to be talking about our gambling. So if you are not here for that, leave now. Go watch the other episodes. But today we're talking about how we gambled. So just be careful. Don't stick around for that if you're fresh and don't want to hear about that.
Yeah, and it can be triggering, even if you think that you don't get triggered, because I just went through this. Sometimes things can trigger us and we don't even realize it. So if you start to feel a little bit of anxiety or something by a conversation we're having, step away. So what was some of the things that you did early on?
So in order to properly to do this, I have to set up my day, which was generally, I was working at this manufacturing plant. And so let's say it was payday, because that was generally like my day to gamble. And so payday happens, clicks in my brain. I'm like, oh, I'm going to go gamble, right? I've hit that point already. I'm going to go. So I would generally go home and take a shower first, and I would wait until after that evening rush. I would go later, like on a weeknight, around 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock, little later in the evening. I didn't want to go right after work. So I would go home, eat, take a shower, and then I would drive to the ATM. And my ATM account, didn't have a ton of money in it or anything like that, because I was gambling and losing, or just not leaving when I was winning. Mm-hmm. But I would take out everything except, there were limits of, I think, either $500 or $600 on my ATM at that time. So you could only take out a max per day of that amount. But generally that was enough to get me down. And I would always leave something extra, something around $20 or under. And the reason was because I could over withdraw my account, and I knew that ahead of time. So I always left a little positive number, because I could take that down to negative 300 or negative 280 or somewhere in that ballpark. And so I'm already thinking ahead about losing and having to over withdraw my bank account as a comfort for me to be able to gamble. So I would go to the ATM, get that money, and then I would drive to a gas station to purchase a pack of cigarettes, because smoking and gambling went together. I didn't do a lot of drinking when I gambled. I did a lot of smoking when I gambled. So that's how mine always started.
For me, I wasn't like a real ritual type person. I think for me, it was just like, if I pull into the casino and I got a parking spot up front, like that to me felt lucky.
Oh.
And so, mine was just more like little things that made me believe that I was meant to gamble. Like it was my way of validating why I was there, why I was gambling, like, or even the day of payday, like you're talking about, the anticipation all day long. And I would just get this feeling and I would be like, oh, today's my day. Today's my day. And what happens is whenever I would win, it reinforced that in my mind that feeling was a good sign, or that parking spot was a good sign. Those kind of things. And I think that's what reconditions our brains. And I'm not a, clinician or anything like that. So don't 100% take me on this, but I really think for me, that's kind of what reprogrammed and caused me to have some of the behaviors that I did.
I never looked for a parking spot. I would always park, I'd pull up. I wouldn't drive towards the door because it was always crowded. I had to go into a parking structure because generally, in this instance, I was driving downtown Detroit. And so it was always, I would go generally to the same farther away level and then go park based on what time I got there. I kind of knew where people would be. A lot of people were kind of leaving when I would get there. So I would just park in the back anyway. So I wasn't looking for lucky parking, but I've never heard that. That's interesting that you would find a parking spot and be like, this is it. Whereas for me, after I bought the cigarettes and the drive to the casino was in a lot of ways better than the casino itself, because I was just thinking about the machines that I was going to play and what was going to happen on them. And this time it's going to be different. This time that almost jackpot is going to be the jackpot. This time I'm not going to, if my machine is unavailable, I'm not going to sit on another machine and kill time by putting money in and waiting for my machine, because I will quickly lose my money. I'm not going to do that this time. I'm not going to play any game that I don't already want to play just because. I'm not going to waste my time with that. And so it was about getting to those couple of machines that for whatever reason, because I had won on them previously, it was about getting to those machines. I had to get to my machines, and not, if I went during a crowded time, that was the point of not going during when it was crowded, because then people would be on my machine. So if I went later when nobody was there, I could get my machine and not waste my money early.
Right. And did you have like the thought too going later, like, oh, people have already like put their money in, lost it, so there's going to be money to be had? Like, did you ever have those kind of thoughts?
I didn't have those. It was more of literally, I don't want to be in a crowded, like there's too many people here. And on Friday, Saturday night, there's too many people there. It was just, let me go after that initial rush of people had gone. So 10, 11 o'clock, generally speaking, just to kind of clear out that initial rush of people.
Yeah, I think for me, if I went in, I always kind of went after work later in my gambling, because probably the last few years, because I was married and I was still kind of like, I obviously wasn't out in the open with it. And so it was like, I could only gamble like for so long. And I think I've said this before, where like I would keep kind of looking out the door to see if it was still daylight. Those kinds of things, so that I knew, I better get home before dark, or I'm not going to be able to talk my way out of this, or something like that. But another odd behavior I had, or habit, or whatever we're calling them, if I tipped the waitress really well, or the server really well, like it would just give me good karma, because I had episodes where that would happen. Every time I'd won a jackpot, I'd tip the people that brought the money back, or I'd tip my waitress really well, and it just seemed to like keep flowing for the night. But in reality, looking back at it in hindsight, it was like I was buying the next jackpot. I just kept buying the next jackpot. But to me, it was like this, I had it so worked up in my head that it was like this karma thing happening, because I was so generous to these people, that it was just, it's just one of those things where you look back at it now and you're like, how did I convince myself of that? But I see how I convinced myself of that.
Did the karma ever work?
It felt like it did in those moments, until it wasn't, until probably later on in my, when it was really bad and I just couldn't win, period. Then it was like, and I still kind of reinforced that, because it was like, well, I'm not winning, so I'm not going to tip as good as I normally would. And then it was like, then I kept not winning, or you know. So yeah, I had for some reason that was a big thing for me.
Yeah. When I arrived at the casino, I had to go downstairs because that's where the machines were that I was playing at that time. Upstairs, all the non-basement people. I was a basement gambler, so I go down in the basement to gamble because these are my people. This is where I was less likely to run into somebody I knew, because I'm, it's Detroit metro area. So I never knew if I was going to run into somebody. And that was the other reason for going later, was to try to not run into anybody. And there was an escalator down. I would always take that escalator, and I could see my machine from the escalator. And so it would always be, all right, go down, get on the escalator. As soon as you clear that first level and you kind of see your machine, and it was like, somebody's on it, son of a gun. What do I do? I just said I'm not going to go waste my time. All right, I'll go get one beer. And again, like, that was my limit, because honestly, I didn't want to have to get up and go to the bathroom. That was it. That was the whole reason for not drinking, was then I have to pee and I don't want to get up.
You have to leave your machine.
I don't want to leave my machine. So in that instance, I would kind of kill some time, and eventually I would either waste time on another machine, which was always disappointing because you can quickly, I was a max better on the machines that I would play. There's no point in not doing max bet, because if I won without doing max bet, it would make me angry. It wouldn't even make me happy.
Yes.
I would be pissed. I would think about the money I didn't win by not doing max bet versus the money I did win. So that it was hard to not do max bet on whatever machine I was playing. So I would try to do more nickel type, sometimes quarters, but nickels, because then I could always do the max bet. But even on a nickel machine, you're betting $5-10 every time you're doing max bet. So it's still a lot of money that goes quickly.
Starting out, like when you start out gambling, it's like 60 cents seems like a lot of money, right? When you first start out, I didn't start out $5 spins. I started out 30 cents, 60 cents. I mean, it took me years to get to $10 spins, $25 spins, and I don't mean to trigger anybody with money amounts, but I'm just trying to show, like,
We've warned.
I got up there in those really high betting amounts. It was like, it was just never going to be good enough. It was never going to be enough. And, but yeah, I remember having those same feelings. Like, I can't go back to betting even $1. Like, betting $1 on something, I'd be like, don't get the bonus, because I don't want. And looking back at it, that's not normal behavior. That's not normal thinking. But yet that was very much my thought pattern. Very, very similar when you talk about that. It just kind of brought that back. But I got a question for you. I think you've mentioned this. I never have dreamed about gambling. I've never had a dream. I've never woke up thinking I was gambling. I've never had any of that experience. What I have had is, if I've stayed out late gambling, I've just kind of had the overstimulation. Like when you've been at the lake all day and you get home and you kind of still feel like you're rocking on the waves. Like, it was kind of similar as far as the casino goes. Like, I was still kind of having like these flashing things behind my eyelids, but it wasn't dreaming or thinking about gambling at night. But I did fantasize about it during the day until I could get to a machine. Did you have dreams?
I've had dreams within the last year that I thought were real, to where I thought, all right, I've crossed the line and it wasn't worth it because I didn't win, and crap, now I've relapsed. And in the dream, I'm thinking, oh my gosh, I've relapsed. Like, I'm very aware in my dream that I shouldn't be gambling, but in my dream, I'm back in the Detroit casinos and I'm gambling. But then I wake up and I go, oh my goodness, that's so weird that I thought that I had relapsed. Because they're very real. But even the feeling, the machines I would see in my dreams were real. The feeling of gambling was real in my dream, where I'm getting that rush of like, in my dream, I think I was there with somebody. So I'm trying to duck and not be seen, I'm trying to hide. So I've had very realistic dreams about gambling. Yes. Okay. And it does, like, the feeling within the dream is very real, but then you wake up and you're like, oh God, thank God. Phew.
I've heard that. And people talk about that in my GA, and I'm like, I've never had a dream like that. I hope I don't, because it sounds very like anxiety ridden. Like,
It
I feel
is.
like
It's
I'd wake up in
weird.
a straight panic attack.
Yeah, because in the dream, you're trying to be sneaky. You're very aware in your dream that you shouldn't be gambling. And yet I'm trying to sneak around and do it behind people's backs. And it felt very real to
Weird.
me. Absolutely
In
it
your
did.
dream, you're being sneaky.
Yeah,
Hmm.
my dream. Even in my dreams, I am trying to hide my gambling.
Wow.
So
That's interesting. Now, I have had one. I used to try and like hide from people too. But I live in a small town and we have casinos everywhere. So I went to the casino. This is right at the end when I was trying to stop gambling. I think it was actually during that relapse that I had that little slip in late February, early March. And I walked into this particular casino. And I'm not going to say who it is just for anybody that's watching, but I ran into somebody that I know probably would never, that it really made me pause because I'm like, I don't think anybody knows that they go here. Like, this is somebody that I know very well. And I've never seen them there before. And it's not something I know that would be okay for them, if that makes any sense. And I remember seeing, and I think this is like the second or last day that I had gambled. I remember seeing this person and I was like, I had this sheer panic come over me. Like, cause I didn't want them, they didn't know I had a problem. I didn't want them to see me there. They didn't know that I gambled. And I turned around and walked out. But I turned around and I walked out because it was, for one, it's such a tiny casino. But I did not want to be like, I felt like this person would have called, like, not called me out because they obviously weren't supposed to be there either, but like, it just wouldn't have been good.
yeah, I saw one of my parents' friends one time at the casino. They didn't see me. I saw them and I just went the other way. And it's not even, they might not even recognize me, but I just thought, what if they see me? And then they're like, hey, I saw Brian in Detroit. And then I'm like, I'm screwed. So I remember avoiding that. I would go, there were 3 casinos in downtown Detroit, and I would always go to the one that I thought was the less glamorous one because I thought anybody I know is probably going to the other 2. I'll go to the one that I find less glamorous. And that way I won't run into anybody I know. That plan worked for quite a while because I didn't really run into anybody I know. And if I did see somebody, I would duck. I mean, I was very much a player who was like head down. I wasn't like kicked back like la la la. I was like head down.
Like, hey, Bill. Hey, Jim.
I would have usually my leg up, my foot up on the whatever the slot's sitting on. And so I would rest my elbow and just sort of and before I would start playing all the time, I remember this, because the ATM at the bank would give you a bunch of 20s, unlike the casino where they give you hundreds because they know you can put that 100 in. But I hated going back into my pocket, pulling out a 20, back into my, so right away I would put like $300 in. So it was annoying as hell to just sit there and put 20s in, but I knew that doing it up front, then I didn't have to worry about it for a while. And then I had this safety net in my pocket, right? The other half of my money's in my pocket is my safety net. And then my ATM is my backup to that, the over withdrawal. And my backup to that is the $500 that I had available for a cash advance on my credit card. So that's how that worked. But it was never like, I'm never going to get that far down the line. Never going to get that far down the line. And then I'd light a cigarette and I'd just sit there and smoke and max bet. And I remember this is so stupid. But the first time I realized you could press the button and stop the reels, like I was very much a press the button and let it go, press the button and let it go. And then one day it clicked like, oh, I could press the button and try and stop it. I honestly thought you weren't allowed to do that. Like, that's not allowed here. You can't stop the reels. And so I remember doing it and like, is this allowed? Can I just stop the reels? And then thinking that I could beat the game by stopping the reels. And so I'm then just wasting money so fast by pressing that button as fast as I could to try to get it to stop.
Yeah.
Next thing you know, I'm through my money and then into the pocket for that first round of safety net money. Like, all right, now I've got to win that back. Got to get back to some level of normal of getting my money back. And that's when the chasing started.
Yeah, I remember I had all those safety nets too. Or, and I remember sitting there, spending my paycheck, already plotting how I was going to manipulate people. I hate that word, but it's the truth of it. Manipulate people to help me cover things that absolutely had to be covered. Because I would rather spend I couldn't walk out with the money I had to go take care of that. I would rather, because I kept thinking, oh, I might win. But I was already trying to figure out a backup plan for if I didn't win. And yeah, that I think I still will still catch me sometimes. When I think back on those things, it's moments like that that still kind of like catch my breath a little bit. Like, I can't believe I did that. I can't believe that I chose to spend my income and expected other people to cover my expenses. And it's just, but it's so typical,
Yeah.
in with gambling addiction. It's just, it changed. And also another thing, it's changing the way that we look at buying things, like things we need, we're like, $5 for paper towels, that's ridiculous. $1,000 in a machine in 30 minutes, nothing. And I just remember just looking at things like that too, like getting away with the bare minimum because I didn't want to spend the money on that because everything I had was gambling money. So looking at those kinds of things too.
I knew all my bills. I knew what I had to pay when I had to pay. And so it was like, if I would gamble my money down to this level, then I knew I'm starting to hit my bills. So then it was like, well, all right, what's the first bill? Okay, I owe my car payment. That's $200. Okay, well, I can pay my car payment late. So I'm going to gamble this 200, try to get this money back. Okay, I lost the 200 for the car. Well, what's the next bill? All right, my phone bill. I can pay that late too. All right, let me gamble this $60 for my phone bill. Okay, what's next? Oh, rent. Ooh, rent's good because rent's like that pool of $600. But I can't really pay rent late. But there's no way I'm going to lose $600. So it was like you start dipping into these bills. And if you could see, what my brain looked like, it would just look like numbers and columns and moving money over and this to that. Like, well, what can I push? And I remember like going through the rent money, like, all right, now I can't pay rent. So now I have no hope but to over withdraw my bank account. Because then if I really need to pay rent, I'm definitely going to win with this over withdrawal of the bank account. But if I really need to pay rent, maybe I can go get a payday loan. And so I'll just get a payday loan to pay rent to make my account even more negative, in the future when I have to pay it back. And that's what it was. And then I remember going, well, I can just go to my sister and say that I don't have the money to cover rent. Can I borrow $200, whatever it is? And that same thing, like, I'll just tell them a lie. I'll just lie and I'll get some money back. And then it was, all right, I've lost all of this. This machine sucks. Clearly, I didn't know what I was talking about. I'm going to go play my other machine. But first, I have to go get the money off my credit card. So you have to go use that credit card machine that's in the corner of the casino. And it's like nobody's using that. No person gambling for their entertainment is using the credit card machine to do a cash advance because you got to pay the casino a fee right off the top based on how much you're taking off. And so if I'm taking $400, I'm paying, I don't know, like $60 right up front, a fee. So it's $460 I'm taking off my cash advance. And then that cash advance APR is so high and it starts right away. It's ridiculous. And then you take your slip up, you get your $400 back. The person in the cage is like, credit card slip. I always felt so bad because that worst feeling was that they would fingerprint you. You'd have to put your fingerprint to get the credit card money. And I just felt that was one of those, like, I feel like a shit bag right now. I'm being fingerprinted at the casino. This is a sign that I shouldn't be here.
Right. But did you think of it as like, you didn't think of it like I shouldn't be doing this, did you?
No, I thought about this is what necessary thing I have to do. I was slightly embarrassed in front of the people who are on the other side, But then it was just like, I'm never gonna see them again anyway. Because I've just
Until
used
next
up
week.
my whole credit card. I'm not going back to the machine. I will try. I've done that. I've gone back to the machine to try just to see it. I've run my ATM card through the credit card machine to see if it would act like a credit card and give me money. And that's worked before. Don't do that. Don't do that.
No.
But then you get that, like, it's that last ditch of, I've now gone through all of my money. I can't pay any of my bills. I have no choice now. I'm in a position of no choice but to gamble in the hopes that I do win so I can pay back all of these levels of safety nets and these bills that I've now used up. And so you run into a place of there's no choice, because what am I going to do? Not pay rent? I have to gamble this
Right.
money to get all that back.
Until you have absolutely nothing left, and then you have to go and you borrow it. And I don't know how many times I borrowed the money and thought, oh, I'll go gamble this, get all my money back, pay them back. And it just never, I ended up worse off. Like, I don't know how many times that's happened,
Cycle.
that vicious cycle. But what I would get embarrassed when I would go to the cashier. Like, I would go to the cashier once I used up my ATM limit for the day, like they, had an ATM limit, then I would go to the cashier and pull from my debit card there. And it was like I would pull money, and then 30 minutes later I'd be out of money and I would have to go back. And it was always the same people. And they're like, hey, not working out for you? I'm like, no, it's not working out. Just give me the money, And like, I think when I probably should have clued in that I had a problem is when they started to know my name.
That's a good point.
When I would walk in and they would, like, I wouldn't even see the server or waitress, and all of a sudden she'd be right there with a Dr. Pepper in her hand. And I'm like, oh, hey, thanks. Damn it. Like, it would be embarrassing. And then, so when they started to know my name or recognize my face, I should have clued in. Like, I don't think this is normal.
That's a very good point. To them,
Yeah.
they're being kind to their customer. Know your customer, KYC, and that. But to you, in hindsight, like, if they know my name, I'm here too much.
Right. And it was embarrassing. And it was like, I can't even imagine what these people think of me. Like, seeing, these people see the same people going back and forth to the ATMs, going back and forth to their booths and things like that. Can you imagine what these people think? I mean, they see the addiction in us before we even recognize it. And so I think that they play an important role in, these operators, these people that are kind of right there. They see the addiction before we do. But having somebody say something to you in a position like that, it's probably not going to go over well. But it'd be great to find a way that they could intervene to some
That is
extent,
the person
right?
who said something to me, was the cage worker. The one time in
Really?
14 years when someone said something, it was the person in the cage. It was my third time up there getting money off of a credit card at it. And she said, are you sure? And it, like, yeah, what else am I going to do at this point? You've seen the other money I sent through here. So it is like, they are very much on, there's a point there. There's that friction point where they could really make an impact on your life. If there was a way to reach you, there's just no way. There's no way to reach you when you're in that zone.
Yeah, very true.
To me, it's up to the management of the establishment to do that, not the hourly person behind the cage. I mean, yeah, they can say something, but what am I going to say? Like, wow, that's a good point. I should go home. I wish that was what I would say, but it's not. It's going to be like, get out of my business. I'll be fine. I'm not going to be fine, but I have no other choice. If somebody presented me with a choice, maybe. If somebody said no, like, you can't do this right now because you can't afford this, maybe. I don't know. But I remember being embarrassed at the cage many times about, like, taking money off my credit card, the same person seeing me 2 or 3 times in an evening.
It was for me, especially right back to back. I would even go, if there was another cage on the other side, I would walk my ass all the way over to the other side just so I didn't have to see the same person again.
Same.
But even the security guards walking through there, they see you. And I only had one person one time when I wanted a sizable jackpot. He was like, no, you're going to take this home. Like, and he's somebody that I recognized. He recognized me. I don't know that we were on first name basis, but he recognized me. And he's like, no, and he recognized that I was an addict, even though I didn't. Because he was like, take this home, leave with it. And I was like, oh yeah, totally. Like this saves my ass. Totally. I did not leave with it. I spent the next 5 hours spending it and walking out. And I still remember that feeling walking out, like, what was I thinking? And that's somebody that's struggling with an addiction. I couldn't leave. I couldn't stop.
I hate it. Not hate it. That's ridiculous. Winning a jackpot on a machine. When that's like, you're sitting there like, and your heart is jumping at these almost wins, at the, it was that bump, bump, bump. And on that third bump, that's it. That's the jackpot. And so that's what you're hearing bump, bump, and your heart is jumping out of your body at every time. And in your brain, you're going, it was so close. It's got to be close. I've got to be able to do it. And it's a stupid machine. It doesn't work that way. And it's so disappointing that I was able to fall for that. I was addicted. So that's why. But I remember, you win a jackpot and it's that instant relief of, okay, I'm paying all that back that I just did, and I'm ahead. But right now I have to wait for my money. So I'm not gambling right now. And it's just like, and people are looking at me. And so I hated that. I hated when people would crowd around when you hit a jackpot. I hated it. I was like, get away from me.
Yeah.
And then the other thing is, you're like, okay, I can't gamble. All my money's in the machine. I have nothing else to gamble. So I'm just sitting here not gambling right now. Bring me my money. And of course, every time I hit a jackpot, I way overtipped the person who would walk me money. Like, way overtipped. Because I'm like, look at me with my money. And I would just be like, here you are, madam. I'm highfalutin now with my $4,000.
Yeah.
And then first thing I would do is I would finish up, there's always some left in the machine. And so I didn't expect to hit another jackpot on a machine that I just hit a jackpot. So it was just like, play that out depending on how much is in there. And I would go to the bathroom. I would go in a stall. I would count the money. I would organize the money. And then I would take out the high bill, the hundreds, half the hundreds, put it in my pocket. Like, this is never getting touched. I've even gone out to my car and set it in my car before. And then the other half, I'm like, well, I'll see what I can do. Like, I'm ahead. I just won. I've been here for 7 hours and I just won. I'm ahead. I was lucky that I didn't have to walk out with my head between my legs, but or my tail between my legs, I guess is the better expression. But instead I find a new machine, or I find a different machine. They're like, oh, and then you're playing higher stakes. You're like, whatever, it's FU money. I just won. Hooray. And it's gone like that.
Yep.
And then I'm back in my pocket, taking half of the half. And that's gone because you're just like, whatever, it's higher stakes. I gotta win. I gotta win. And then, if I had taken out to the car, I went back to the car, got that money, came back in. When I was in the car, I could have just driven home.
I had such similar behaviors. If I would win, I'd go to the bathroom, I'd organize it in my purse and be like, okay, I'd zip this money up, put it in my purse. Like, I am not touching that. I've got to pay bills with this money. I'd be like, but I can spend this money. And then I would go back out and I would do the same exact thing. I would spend that money and be like, okay, well, I'm going to dig into this a little more and the same exact thing until it was all gone. Like, I couldn't leave with money. But I don't know how many times I went to the casino, like on Payday, and I'm like, I'm leaving my debit card here. I'm just taking this cash in. I'd leave it in the car. Or I'd leave my money in the car and just take in, this is all I can afford to play. And how, like 3 or 4 times back and forth to the car. One time I even left my money at home like the money I wasn't going to play. I just had the certain amount I was going to play. I drove home and got it, went back. So yeah, when you're addicted, you know, those measures and those things that we try and put in place, they just end up making us spend more gas, you know, to
They
go
don't
back
work.
and forth. They don't work. When you're that far
addicted to gambling, setting a limit does not work.
If you can't meet that limit, if you can't walk out, you know, if it causes a problem in any aspect of your life, it's a problem. And that's when you need to start recognizing it. And that's why it's so important to talk about it and to talk about these things. You know, because just these little behaviors, somebody may not have all these behaviors. Somebody may only have like a certain part of them. Like maybe somebody's at the point where they're leaving the money in the car and going back in. It's not maybe necessarily causing this financial burden for them, but it's starting to cause them to start doing these behaviors. That's a good point to talk about. And so somebody can recognize that and be like, okay, I'm doing that. You know,
Yeah.
Will it change their path? I don't know, but I never heard that whenever I was, you know, I never heard stories like this.
Well, it's, and you were there too, I'm sure. And at the end of that night, when you've lost everything, or you're playing your last $100 and some knucklehead is vacuuming under your feet.
Yes.
And that was,
you're like,
to me, that was the
lost.
ultimate worst feeling, was somebody vacuuming under me. It's 4 a.m. I didn't win and I have to go to work in 2 hours. And so then I'm just thinking, oh my God, I can't pay my bills. I'm tired. I'm hungry. I have to go home, take a shower, and go straight to work on no sleep. You shouldn't be driving at that point. To me, that's as bad as texting, driving, drinking, and driving at that point. Because my head is not in the game of driving. It's what the hell am I going to do with all of my bills and all this money I just lost? Also, the thought of yesterday was payday. I gambled on payday. I have to wait 2 more weeks.
Yeah.
What
How am I going to get gas, groceries?
What am I going to eat? And it was always like, there was a time where it was peanut butter and cheap cigarettes would get me by. Like bread, peanut butter, cheap cigarettes, because cigarettes made me not want to eat. So I would smoke. And that's no way to live. Like, I'm eating peanut butter. I'm eating McDonald's dollar menu, which is awful when you haven't slept, awful in general, but awful when you haven't slept and you're eating that crap at 10 o'clock in the, just
makes you feel terrible.
Such a dirty existence.
It
that
really
I'm so
is.
happy to not be a part of anymore.
Me too. And I think it's important to talk about these things too, even for our own recovery, because it reminds us this is a space we don't want to be in anymore.
Yeah.
I think some of the hardest stuff for me was going on payday. Okay. I probably had gambled my husband's paycheck, probably the week before or something. And I was thinking I was going to catch it up with mine. Well, I get paid monthly. And so it was like a double hit when I would do this, and I would lose all this money and I'd have all this debt. I'd have to worry about making sure that he had the groceries he needed for his lunch and stuff like that, because he works in the field. And I would come home and I'd have to sit on the couch next to him, knowing the devastation I just caused in our finances. And, you know, he's just sitting there not realizing everything that I'm internally going through because of what I just did. And I think it's important to acknowledge that, because that's so many people. That's so many people tonight that are sitting on the couch that maybe had just gone through this. And they have all this inner turmoil from all these things, and they can't talk about it. They can't talk about it. And so I just remember there were so many of those nights for me. And I know that you weren't married at the time, but you still had that struggle too, I'm sure. Like when your friends and your buddies were going around, they were able to live up this younger life and you couldn't do those things. Right?
Yeah. Or even, you know, dating people at the time, like, oh, you want to go out on Friday? And I'm like, I can't afford to go out. Like, I legitimately can't afford to join it. I might not be living in this apartment anymore. But I think it had, I mean, I think I'm lucky in that I wasn't affecting, I didn't have an affected other that was living with me. And I might have
Yeah.
had a roommate and not been able to pay rent from time to time, but I wasn't married. There weren't kids involved. So I'm lucky in that regard that I got all that out of the way prior to that. But I haven't gambled since I've been married. So
Yeah.
that feels good. It must have been a lot harder to be married and have to deal with that like guilt factor.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. It would keep me awake at night. And I still have bad sleeping habits from all those years of that. I don't sleep much. And I think a lot of that comes from that. Plus I have, health issues from the stress of that. And I know, so many people have experienced that same emotion of just being so ashamed, of what I just did, having to figure out how to lie about it and not lie about it at the same time. Because my husband's a smart man. It's not like he's not a smart man. I think he didn't ask because he didn't want to know.
Yeah.
It's probably more appropriate. I mean, he knows now, and we work through it and those types of things. And he supports me best he can, for somebody that doesn't understand gambling addiction. But it's definitely a much better space to be in when I can sit on the couch next to him knowing that all our bills are paid. I'm not hiding anything. It's a great feeling today, and that's what 9 months of recovery has given me back.
Yeah, I didn't realize talking about the peanut butter and the cigarettes, that gives me a very like dirty feeling. I remember back then. I remember those times and not being it like that was it. Like this is my food for 2 weeks. And it's nice that I don't have to deal with that anymore.
You can have jelly now.
Yeah.
I have jelly
I
now.
have jelly and I don't smoke cigarettes anymore. So I'm in a better position for sure. But what's scary to me is we talked about all these different humans that were in the casino that maybe, even though they didn't say anything, but maybe they had the opportunity, right? So there was at least more opportunity. But now all those moments of getting cash, going to a machine, it's all done right on the machine now. It's all done right on the machine. You can do cashless at most casinos on the machine. And then scarier too is on your phone. It's just a click of a button, like buying on Amazon, and the money can just go so quickly. So you just have to be very careful and aware that if you are gambling beyond your means, then you should definitely reach out for help, because it can get really bad really quick when your bank account empties.
Especially too, if you're gambling on your phone, it takes all the work out of it. I fortunately never found online gambling. It's not something that's available in the state. I'm sure there's black market sites or whatever, but it's nothing that I was ever exposed to. I didn't know about it until I stepped into recovery and saw so many people struggling with it. And so I am fortunate that that's not something, but there are great products for good time to talk about a product that's helpful for that. You've got Gamban,
Yes.
Those are great. It's a great software to put on your phones, your devices, to block those online sites. And that's a great way. It's a great tool to at least make you think about it, because it's not something that you're going to be able to easily do after you do that.
Yeah,
and so
blocks all the software, creates that friction that a human doesn't. It'll just block gambling sites for you, so you don't have to worry that you're going to go across them. It's good software.
Right. And it's great. And then if there's the option to self-ban, do that self-ban from individual casinos online too. There's a bunch of different options that you can kind of block. I think since we talked about so many ways we could gamble, might throw in here at the end.
And the phone number list will be up after we're done talking for each state, the national number. So hopefully you live in a state where there is help available. If you don't live in a state where help is available or good help, call another state, but find help best you can and tell somebody about it. I would say is the easiest and cheapest thing to do is to talk to another human about your gambling addiction. Even if you just call the 800 number of whatever the 800 number is, where you are and just tell the other person on the other end of the phone. They're there to help you. So and they want to help you. So
Yeah. Or get in the online communities. Social medias have a lot of communities for problem gambling, gambling harm. There's a lot of Facebook groups and things like that you can get on there and read the stories and find some inspiration and hope. And we are two people who are in recovery. Brian is 7 years in recovery. I'm 9 months officially this week in recovery.
yay.
And, it can be done. And it's a great feeling because a lot of these things that we struggled with while gambling, 9 months in recovery, I still have things that I have to work through. I gambled for 15 years. So I still have finances and things like that I'm still shifting through, working through. And even just relearning my relationship with money. I don't know if you had to struggle with that, but I don't think I ever had a good relationship with money to begin with. So having to relearn the value of money, that's been interesting. So
Mine was more about mental health, unaddressed mental health issues that I'd never addressed. Because even after 7 years, I was suicidal 2 months ago. So it was addressing my mental health needs. You never want to ignore those. I ignored them for 20 years and it did not go well for me. So definitely look into it all. And that's the whole joy behind calling the 800 number, finding help online or wherever it is that you want to find help. We post a lot of stuff on this video that you've seen. So check that help out. And the nice thing is a lot of the state helplines also have chats or texts. So you don't, maybe you're not ready to say it out loud, but you could just text and it kind of keeps you at that distance of like, I don't want to talk to somebody, but text and be like, hey, on chance that I called the 800 number when I was 18, about 3 months into my gambling, because I was like, this is out of control. And I gambled for another 14 years. Don't do that. Right away. Most people know. You look at your gambling, you go, oh, crap. Why is this causing me harm? Oh, I don't have the money to be doing this. I'm doing it all the time. It's taking up all the space in my brain. These are all great reasons to reach out and just, nobody said you have to stop, but you might want to look into that if it's causing you harm.
Definitely. Or those around you harm. For sure. There's a lot of great resources, and even stepping into recovery and finding the resources for gambling. A lot of times you'll find healing you didn't even know you needed from past experiences, past relationships. So yeah, definitely.
It is. I was gonna say it's hard, but maybe, I don't know. Maybe it'll be easy for you. I don't know. Hopefully it's easier for you. I don't know, but it's it's a hard road, but it's better than not gambling. Is better than gambling, because whatever, and a lot of people in recovery, I think, will tell you this, that whatever they were looking for with gambling, they found without gambling. They found in recovery. So
kind of boils down to choose your hard, right?
Yeah.
Choose your hard. Recovery's hard. Addiction's hard. But you lose with addiction and you gain with recovery. So, you just, at the end of the day, you got to choose your hard.
Choose your hard.
Choose your hard. That should be our new slogan, right?
We'll flash it across.
Okay, maybe not. Maybe talking helps. I think we'll stick with that one.
Talking helps. Well, I think that's a good place to end.
Agreed.
I'm Brian.
I'm Christina.
This was the Bet Free Life. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.
Hi, welcome to the Oh, I thought I was gonna have it this time.
Round two.
Round two. Hi.